welcome back to another episode of the Self-Directed Podcast. Today's very, very special guest, we've got Gabriel Mitchell, who is an OG of Praxis alumni, OGs from very early on in Praxis beginning. Gabriel, welcome to Self-Directed.
Hey, man. Thank you. It would have been 2014 that I finished the program, if I remember correctly. It's been a impactful journey, I might say.
That's great. I'm excited to dive deeper into more of that origin story. First, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us what you're up to now, and we'll kick it off.
Yeah. It's sometimes hard to figure out how to describe yourself when those sorts of questions come off, right? Because you can talk about your work history, you can talk about your passions, you talk about your values. One way I've been trying to frame it lately is that I'm kind of an armchair philosophy nerd that found a way to get paid to do that. And so in some sense, I just really care a lot about ideas and exploring philosophies and putting myself in a position where career-wise, I can just engage that on the next level.
Yeah, I love that. I love the term armchair philosopher. I've sometimes described myself as a Bush League intellectual. So same thing. I do appreciate the kind of everyday approach that you have to philosophy, and really how you have taken something that's somewhat of an unconventional, is there a career path outside academia, and forged that on your own. So I want to rewind the clock though. And I want to go back to the early days, like what you were doing before Praxis, and talk about that moment of choosing to go an unconventional route. What were you doing before Praxis? What were your goals at that point in time in your life?
So I think my journey here is probably similar to a lot of people who are in this community. I was very disgruntled with my public school education. I ended up choosing halfway through high school to join like a dual enrollment program. Uh-huh. And so I was taking some college courses, and even that was pretty disappointing. I liked it a little bit more because I could take classes I actually wanted, but just didn't really do it for me. And there's a guy who used to work with Praxis called Zach Slayback, someone really worth checking out, especially if you want to learn about like email communication and pitching and these sorts of things. And he was a friend of mine at the time. And so while I was in high school, I was working with him online, running pages like Libertarian High Schoolers and things like that. And he would have been in college at the time. And he started working with Isaac. And through kind of this intellectual journey I was going through, and I was thinking about what I wanted in my future, I was thinking about the people I was spending time with. I found myself hanging around with a lot of college age libertarian types and just kind of engaging them in their ideas. Yep. Through that, I just kind of realized that university maybe wasn't the path for me. Mm-hmm. I like ideas. I even like lectures. Yeah. I would have made a phenomenal student, but I was just thinking more and more about what the future of the university system looks like and how much impact I actually want to have in the world. And I was realizing that just wasn't the path. And so then after interacting with Zach, and he was telling me a little about Praxis, I actually ran into Isaac at a program, like a Students for Liberty program. And we had this really good conversation about, so of course I live in Colorado, so like marijuana legalization is a really hot topic, especially at the time. And I kind of told him, there's a person who's left out in these conversations, and that's the drug dealer. There's something about the way the entrepreneur in these black markets kind of promotes the culture and grows that in a way that's almost more important than the political activist. And that isn't to say, changing the law isn't important, but there's just something missed out in the conversation where we're thinking about the entrepreneur's role in the political process. And it's that idea that Isaac and I really connected on that has since influenced my career. And I've thought a lot about how do I promote ideas, not by voting, not by even lecturing, as much as I enjoy doing that type of stuff, but how do I promote ideas by building new things? Yeah. Or starting businesses, or helping people do those things. Yep. And so that's been kind of the driving philosophy and sort of how my pre-Praxis journey defined that. Yeah,
I really like that. Quick tangent here. I really like that idea of advocating change by just building the world that you want, instead of like relying on activism or indirect solutions. Like, just why not build a world that you want? Build the business or facilitate the business that helps people, live out the world that they want. So awesome that, that was an early connection point for you. So let's talk a little bit, about kind of that transition from I'm disgruntled. I know that I want to do something else to going and turning that into a career. Did you know, at that point in time, like I have a clear path of the kind of things that I want to be working on? Did you know that you wanted to do philosophy or figure out a way? What kind of direction and level of clarity did you have at that point?
There was a lot of uncertainty.
Uh-huh.
I've always been good at knowing what my core values are,
Yeah.
and like the things that I really care about, the things that I think are moral. But beyond that, there was a lot of uncertainty. And so when we were going through the original placement process, which I think was a little bit more chaotic than how it looks these days, I was trying to aim towards companies that aligned with my values to some degree. Yeah. I was open to ideas, but I was very fortunate to land a company in Denver. So it was only an hour away from where I grew up. That was selling gold and silver bullion, so like bars and coins and things like that. And a huge portion of their sales was happening in Bitcoin. And so there was kind of this ethos within the organization about being innovators and promoting human freedom and exploring and promoting these new technologies. And, I was young, I was 18, right out of high school, kind of experimenting this. And I was very much in over my head. But the people that I met and the ideas I engaged in that moment really solidified to me that even if I don't know exactly what my path is going to be, and I don't know exactly what the roles are going to be, I know that I can engage an industry that cares about these ideas.
Yep.
And so that doesn't have to be writing. That doesn't have to be being a philosopher, but there's this industry out there of people who care about ideas and want to promote it through technology and innovation in companies. And you can inject yourself there. You can be a customer service person or a marketer. You can do all these things that are standard roles, but also at the same time be engaging ideas. And so that was sort of the drive. It doesn't matter to me really what the role is. What matters to me is that the ideas align with my values.
Yeah, I think that's an important revelation. The point you just made, and I know you just published an awesome article on Medium I'm going to link to about love philosophy, build your career without the degree, is I think there's a tendency to think that, if you want to be involved in the world of ideas, there's one way to do it. There is one path. Usually that's academia or, some kind of like tangential career path to academia, where that's the intellectual world. Everything else is, this other immaterial world that has nothing to do with that idea. So was this something that you feel like you developed, immediately kind of in the real world, or like, I know you have some kind of like philosophy about the way to approach your career and turn, make your career what you want it. But like, talk to me about that kind of educational process that you underwent, both in that early career experience over the next, few years in your career.
Yeah. So like if there's one core message I'm trying to get across with this podcast, like articles that I'm working on, it's that philosophy is an industry. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people want to treat philosophy as something special, and it is special. It's a very important thing, but it's not unique. There are companies and nonprofits that are doing things just like any other company or nonprofit, and philosophy is just another industry. Yeah. So that's like the one message I'm really trying to get to. And I think my journey of understanding that was just especially meeting people who were promoting ideas that I cared about. Yep. And I realized that some of them were just philosophers in like the pure sense, they were academics or they were publishing books, but others were entrepreneurs building cool innovations, or they were connected with nonprofits that were helping other philosophers build their brand or something. And it was just kind of that journey of exploring ideas and meeting interesting people that kind of connected these dots for me.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think back to my own early career too. And, coming out of college, I was very disgruntled. I was even less sure about what I wanted to do with the, in the world. I had this faint idea of like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to do business, something. So I'm going to go back to law school and get an MBA because that's how you break into business. And coming out of college, being very, going down that libertarian rabbit trail, if you will, that we all do when you first pick up Ayn Rand, and then, you start going down the rabbit trail. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's this entire world of ideas out there. And I gravitated toward, law, and then economics, then the nonprofit world, and then ultimately like go work in a startup. And that was kind of like, it was kind of like this, this domino effect. The world of ideas was the entry point for me, but then it quickly, transitioned into, going out into the real world and being part of a business. I want to talk more and hear more about kind of your career stepping stones.
Sure.
From this is my early career experience. I'm starting to have this, this kind of hunch about how I can pursue the things I'm interested in through industry.
Yeah. So as mentioned, my Praxis partner was Amagi Metals. And so I was working in this like Bitcoin space, meeting these people. And one thing that's interesting, almost as a tangent here, is that company started to go under while I was working there. And oh boy, was that an education. Yeah. I learned so much about the stress of that type of environment and the deals that are cut behind doors to kind of solve problems and just engaging it. And eventually the company was sold and I moved on and I did some stuff. But while I was there, literally I was digging through a closet or something and I found a box of a bunch of t-shirts that were clearly themed around libertarian ideas. Yeah. And I was talking to the founder of the company I was working for. I was like, hey, man, what the hell is this box? This is really interesting. And he explained that when he was like early college, this was a side project, like his first business that he ran. And I thought, oh my God, that's brilliant. I bet this is like super easy, right? You could just call up a printer and get some shirts printed and go. And so that was my next project. While I was working for Amagi Metals, I started a clothing brand. This first clothing brand was a terrible failure. I spent hundreds of dollars buying products that did not sell, spent way too much money on like a Shopify website, and I learned so much as a result. And then after leaving Amagi Metals and kind of working random little part-time jobs, I was like, okay, let's try this again. I've learned the process. And so my first major success in the entrepreneurial world was running a clothing brand themed around cryptocurrencies. It's called Ethereum Clothing. The site is still up. It's run by some Zittings, which are other Praxis people. They actually invited me to come help them do some marketing stuff this past month or so. And so I'm still kind of involved. But I found a way to solve all the problems that I had before. So instead of buying a bunch of products, I found a way to ship them as their bot, like print them and ship them as their bot. And I could automate that through a different company. And so all I really had to do was like focus on the marketing and learn that skill, focus on the customer service and learn that skill, do the basic web development and get it over with. And I ran that for about 2 or 3 years. And there was maybe times where I worked little part-time jobs here and there, but it was overall, that was like my main source of income for a while. And I was young, I'm still young. And so I could live poor. And so main source of income could mean just a couple, like $1,000 or two, like it doesn't really mean much. But I went through that process and it was such an amazing learning experience because I took this idea of like aligning my values with my work and also with like building this personal freedom in my life. And I had great support. I had a friend who invested some money and I was able to go through that process of what is it like to get an investor? What's it like to pitch the company? And then as mentioned, I ended up selling the company and then I was able to really reap that reward. Maybe most importantly, not just the money, but the psychological satisfaction that came from that. Unfortunately, self-employment comes with a lot of costs, like not having predictable income, not having health insurance. And so my next step after that was I ended up working for the Institute for Humane Studies. This is a nonprofit that actually a lot of Praxis people have a relationship with. I believe Isaac even worked there for a while. And that's a company I actually just finished working with them literally weeks ago. But I was helping philosophers and like economists and historians, these type of people. I was helping them promote their research, helping them host book clubs, helping them put together discussion groups for the students. In some sense, I was being paid to read philosophy books. And that was rad. Like there's a lot to struggle with when it comes to nonprofits, and any role is going to have its struggles and strengths, weaknesses. But it was such a cool experience for like 2 years to just read philosophy books and continue to network in this thing that I was passionate about, and to do this all without a degree. I think that's really worth noting here because I was working directly with academics and being treated as a peer and being treated as someone that they would send their drafts to, that they would pick ideas back and forth. And I was able to do that just by signaling that I'm an interesting person who cares about ideas and I can build this brand around it. And it doesn't matter if I have that credential or whatever. Even the academic philosophers as long as you can fit certain cultural norms for them, they don't care. They're happy to engage you just as much.
Yeah.
And in fact, one thing I like to brag about is that one of the ways I landed that job was that during the interview process, I tracked down one of the books of the late founder, F.A. Harper, and I read it. And when I started talking to people in the interview process, and of course, when you're working for a nonprofit, it's a long interview process. And you meet all these different people. I realized that no one else had read it. And so I was able to stand out as I'm an authority on the core ideas of this organization more than you are.
Yeah.
And so they had to hire me, obviously. And so that was this really great journey. And as mentioned, I finished up working there a few weeks ago. I have now moved on to a marketing position with the Objective Standard Institute, which is another philosophy-oriented nonprofit. They're a little bit more profit conscious. They're doing things like selling courses and hosting events. But that's kind of the new thing. I literally just started a day ago. It's a little bit more of a startup environment, which I'm finding really fun. But it's just a continuation of that fun journey of how do I get paid to engage the ideas that I care about and do real work that promotes the things that I care about. And that's where I'm at right now, man. It's been a really fun journey.
That's awesome. There are at least several things that I want to unpack there. First, I want to talk about, just kind of highlight this and then move on, is what you said at the very beginning when you were talking about transitioning out of a role and into kind of your own thing. And it wasn't about the money. I didn't need the most income. I found a way to start with the things that were important to me and my values, and then work backwards from there to figure out all the other things, like figure out, how to pay the bills and to eat and all of those. I think so many people get that wrong. They put, and again, everybody has different targets they're aiming at, but I think so many people live lives, as Thoreau put it, of quiet desperation, because they start with I need to go pay my bills. I need to go have this semblance of security and stability in my life before I figure out what's important to me. And I think that's like, it's so frustrating for me, but I wanted to call that out because I think that's awesome.
Yeah. I actually have a quick thought on that.
Yeah.
My challenge to anyone listening to this who's early in their career, it can be daunting to think about what's your core big mission that's driving you. Instead, just think about what are the things you want to do.
Yep.
Right. Do you want to go rock climb all the time? Do you want to, run and bike? Do you want to swim? Do you want to live near nature? Like if you can't think of big abstract things, think about concrete things you want to do with your life. And when you're young, just go do it. Right. Build a career around facilitating that. And so if that means working less so you have more time to rock climb, then do it. When you're doing that, you'll slowly discover these abstract principles that you care about, but you don't have to start with the big principle, and you don't have to start with what other people want. You could just do what you want and go from there.
Yeah. And I always find it funny too, because, I think that we are kind of, as a society, somewhat programmed to go chase these extrinsic motivators, the money, the status, the company that I work for. Will this make people proud? Who do I get to network with and get to name drop, blah, 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 all these kind of things. And when you start breaking those things down, and I think they're very fragile, I always laugh at the one where people are like, I got to make this amount of money. Okay, great. Well, once you make this amount of money, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to do these things. I'm going to go get a mortgage. I'm going to go do these things. And it's like, so then, I'm going to invest so I can retire. It's like, well, once you get to the end, you go through the whole thing. Well, what are you going to do after that? What are you ultimately working toward? And it's like, well, those are the tangible, concrete things they actually care about. But it's like, I'm going to waste my entire life, or the most productive, best years of my life, laboring away at things that I don't really care about, doing work that's mindless to me, or I'm not deeply passionate about, so that someday down the road, after the best of me that there is gone, then and only then can I return to the thing that I care about. And I have such a deep conflict with that, because your approach, which I think is great, is like, if you get really honest about the things that matter to you, I think oftentimes you can find it's not hard to figure out that those things are much closer to in reach than what you think they are. So
yeah, 100%, man. Just prioritize what you want and let that be the driving star and not anything else.
Yeah. So another point that I want to break down, and I want to get your insights on this, is you did it in the world of academia, and I think a somewhat hybrid world of academia, working outside of academia without a degree. But I think that this is relevant for a lot of other people, whether they have a degree or not, or they have a degree but it's not in the field they're in, or they have no kind of that like stamp of approval. How do you go become peers with people who are experts in the field when you don't have all of the right, pedigree for that thing?
Yeah, the thing I find funny about networking is everyone tries to come up with like systems and principles. And honestly, half the time, if you just send someone a Facebook message and say, "Hey, I really loved your book,"
Yep.
And especially if you're specific, like, "Hey, I loved your book. This section really stood out to me," or "Here's a question about it." 80% of the time, you'll get a response. And half of those responses, if you're charming enough, you might even get a signed book out of it. I have a huge stack of signed books just from messaging people. There's a philosopher I recently made a meme for. I was so in love with his work, I thought it was really funny, so I made a meme about his work and sent it to him. And so he hit me up on Messenger, and we just had a conversation. And he's like, "Wow, I really like chatting with you. Would you like the conversation was like, "Hey, there's one of these books of yours I really mean to read." I said, "Oh, I'll send you one." And it was just that. It was just, if you could just be a genuine person who really sincerely cares about the people's work, and that's the important part there. You can't fake it. You can't fake it. But if you sincerely care about these things, you can just talk to them, just message them, see what happens. That's how low the bar is.
That's a great recommendation. I think another important kind of extension of the same idea though is like where you are shifting your perspective from pursuing ideas because of the status of ideas, as toward I'm actually engaging with these ideas because they're important and useful for my life.
Yep.
I think that's a big shift. I think that, especially in the world of ideas and philosophy. So what other advice would you give to the young person, young professional in their career? They have something they're interested in. They're not sure how it translates into a plan that's tangible, that they can tell everybody, "Hey, I have a plan. Don't worry about me if I go off, in uncharted waters." What advice would you give for them?
So this isn't really advice, but the answer is just go do it. Like, just shut up and do it and stop caring what people say. I would say one, really test yourself. See what things you could do in life that make things a little bit more difficult for you. Like, can you be poor? That's a good lesson to learn. Can you be poor and happy? Because there's going to be times in your own career where you're going to experience that, especially if you're like starting your own business or something. So test that out. Can you just live off of a part-time job for a while and see what happens? I'd say another thing is learning to see difficulty not as a barrier, but an opportunity. Yeah. And you don't always have to do the difficult thing. Like, you don't have to run a marathon if you don't want to. But if you're presented with two options and like two career paths, and one is really easy and one's really hard, and they're both things you kind of want to do the hard thing.
Yep.
Just take that as an opportunity to grow, and you will grow faster and faster. Another common thing a lot of people run into is imposter syndrome. Just accept it as a natural part of growth. Don't try too hard to like fight it or overanalyze it. Just like whatever. Become friends with people who are on a similar journey. That's one thing I've really loved about the Praxis community is I've gotten to know people who are not only at my level, but as kind of this vertical network of people who are above and below. And so we can bounce ideas off each other. And I can see how their psychology changed as they were going through the journey. And I can see how mine is going to change as a result. And I can pick their brains. So that's a handful of things there.
Man, so many good ones. Oh, so many good ones there. I love the do the hard thing. That reminds me of, several specific instances in my career. I don't think that, I had any kind of like grand intention behind it, but maybe it was more of like accidentally choosing the hard thing. I think that's a huge one. Also love the idea of like the vertical network. Not just being in, like college is very horizontal, it's you and everybody else at the same stage. And it's almost difficult to facilitate that vertical network.
Yeah, I think Zach Slayback gets credit for some of the vocabulary here. I'm almost certain that both of those ideas came from articles that he wrote years ago that I stumbled upon or something.
Awesome. Well, Gabriel, thank you so much for sharing some of your story. Any other parting insights that you'd like to leave behind?
Uh, I have some things I want to plug once we're kind of closing up here. But as far as advice for journeys, the barrier is much lower than you think it is. And I know people in this community say that all the time, but I'm surprised by how often it hasn't clicked. I've interviewed for jobs where people are like, oh my God, you sent me a pitch, you sent me a video, you sent me an idea. No one's ever done that for me. Sometimes even Praxis people that apply don't even do it.
Yeah.
The bar is so goddamn low that please, for the love of God, if you're applying for a job, do something unique and don't just send in an application.
Yep. That's great. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us on an episode of Self-Directed. Plug away. Plug away.
Yes. So because I work now for the Objective Standard Institute, this is a philosophy nonprofit. We are hosting an event next month called TOSCon, the Objective Standard Conference. It is in late July, and I've been given a coupon code for self-directed audiences that is literally 50% off. We are so excited to have the type of people who would listen to this podcast being there. And so the coupon code is just self-directed, all caps, no spaces, self-directed, 50% off. You can come to our conference. You can talk about personal development, self-improvement. There's going to be people like Isaac Morehouse, Cal Newport is going to be there. Just interesting, awesome people. I'll be there, and I'm happy to talk about ideas with you guys. So please, please, please come. It's in July. That's TOSCon. That's the Objective Standard Conference. 50% off with that coupon. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, that's awesome. Incredibly generous. Thank you for that. And again, Gabriel, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Self-Directed. Our listeners out there, if you are on YouTube, enjoyed this episode, leave us a comment. If you're on your other favorite podcast platforms, leave us a review. We look forward to sharing more with you again soon in a future episode. Thanks as always for listening.